I sometimes catch up with films that the director's done, but I knew all of Adrian's work. Actually, the only one I hadn't seen was Lolita. And I did run that to have a look at it, but I didn't go back and run any of his other films again. I mean, I knew them, and I knew the kind of director he was and where he was kind of coming from in a way. So, but I like to come fresh. I don't talk to. Sometimes Adrian said, "Why don't you talk to another editor that did?" Well, I said, "No, Adrian, I don't want to do that. I want to come fresh with my ideas. I don't want to go back with what other people felt or thought about you, But the directors have their own style, and you're guided very much by what they give you, the kind of dailies that you get. You may get a lot of coverage. You may get a really nice master shot, which we used to get much more in the old days. And if the acting was great, why cut? I mean, you could just play it, and sometimes they move the camera in really lovely rhythmic ways. So that would, and then you wouldn't cut very much, and that would kind of, guide the style that you use. But I think one does bring one's own style to a picture, certain rhythms and timings and things that you bring yourself from your own person and experience. But I tried to think I didn't have a style. I tried to think that I was always bringing something different to movies. But my daughter, who went to university and did drama, theatre, really, in London, she said to me one day, "What's your style, Mum?" And I said, "Well, I don't think I have one, Emma." And she said, "Oh, yes, you do. We're studying it in class." So I guess one does have a style. So maybe it is there through all my movies. With Adrian, he's such an enthusiastic person. I am too. I think that's why we got on so well. We had a wonderful time together, actually. I mean, we had our ups and downs. We had some really flaming rows, which I don't usually do, actually. But the great thing about Adrian is that he's over it in minutes and doesn't hold it against you or anything. In fact, sometimes he even apologizes. But sometimes you can tell he definitely wants to have a row or whatever. So, but I think good things come out of that sometimes. It does stretch your ingenuity, and he asks you to do some really difficult things sometimes. And they're not things that necessarily look difficult, but sometimes we've cut things out and lost things, and the pacing on the film was quite difficult. How much you'd let the audience know, and how much he would be suspicious of her early on, and then how suspicious she would be when she discovered that she knew that he didn't know, and all those kind of things that were quite complicated in timing and rhythms. And we'd spent a lot of time working on that, not just the rhythms within the scenes, but the actual placement of the scenes. We changed quite a few of them round. This was what I cut first. Before I actually had the train, I cut this scene together as a scene, without any cutaways at all. And we had masses and masses of material, and it was a question of building very carefully, and going through the material. I mean, through and through and through. I went through it so many times, looking for little bits here and little bits there, and little bits of mostly of her. And then she got, because Adrian directed it, and he's saying, "Go on and do this." He's talking all the way through it, or a lot of the way through it. He gets them really worked up. And he did, just not in scenes like this, but in a lot of scenes, he would do many, many takes within a take. So we'd have perhaps 10 printed takes, but each one would have 2 or 3 times, or maybe 4 times within it. It worried me because he picks her up and carries her, but it didn't have a really clean start to the scene. There was never, because Adrian didn't shoot it that way, or want it that way, presumably, but there never was a long shot. There was nothing to sort of start the scene off with, or even start it close and pull back. There was only this kind of material. I was worried about the fact that I wasn't doing something quite right. So, which I rarely did. I went to talk to Adrian about it, actually, and I said, "I'm just a little concerned. I just can't feel I think it's me. I can't get a hold on it. What did you visualize or anything?" And he didn't really want to talk to me about it because he was busy directing. But anyway, and he said, "Well, why don't you try undercutting it with her on the train?" And once I started doing that, it was so exciting because her reactions were so perfect. They didn't really, basically, they're the first bits, and these are the bits. I haven't changed anything very much. I've cut it down a lot. Obviously, it's too long. But basically, the pieces that I chose first, I often find this way. If you can get the right bits first, you're a long way to getting a good scene, So it was a question of just cutting this together and getting the emotion, getting how frightened she is and how she's anticipating it, and all the sexual reactions that she's getting from him touching her like this. Her expressions in the train were so wonderful. Everything that was happening here was reflected in her face there. And she must have been thinking about it, as what her reactions and things she was feeling like. I've never talked to her about it. I will, maybe. I'll see her in England. Find out what she was thinking, that her reactions fitted in with the way I'd cut it so well. These, as you've no doubt noticed, have a bridge in them now on the film. We digitised a bridge with lights so that the road looks as it goes on. It was important, really, for the story, for the choice that they make, that the road was there for them to take. So they did shoot him getting out, you know, and that was the way. I always liked him with him not getting out. It was a brave ending, I thought. And of course, as they said, a very European ending. I said, yeah, well, I am European. That could account for that. But that was the one that I liked. But we then sort of did a slight compromise, because we had him in the original way we cut it. We didn't have him getting out inside. So we cut to the car and held it for a few beats and then had him get out, actually. And then, I don't know, the end never played very well. You know, previews and things like that, the end just didn't play very well. So eventually we said, why don't we be really brave and not have him get out of the car and just hold it? And we ran it for a very small recruited audience at Fox in the big Zanic Theatre there. I mean, it was the first time that we got a sort of ovation at the end, and people were just, that audience was bowled over by that ending. And they said, you know, we asked them questions, said, should he get out of the car? No, they said, no way. And then we showed it again out of town, and there wasn't so much difference between the two endings, but it's still better with that ending, and that luckily sold it to the studios, who allowed, very bravely, I think, the Fox to let Adrian go with that ending. I find it very difficult to talk about editing. I've always found it difficult. I mean, some people can really explain what they're doing. I find it difficult. When I look at the dailies, I can't explain that. It's why I don't want people watching me when I'm cutting. It's a very personal thing. It's something that comes from inside me, and I don't know why I'm making those choices necessarily. Of course, I know the script, and I know what the director wants, I know where I'm going. But to articulate why I choose that particular piece or that particular rhythm or cut on that particular frame, if we used to in the old days, or that particular moment, I find it very difficult to explain that. It's something that comes from within you. It's a flair that, I guess, of timing and rhythm, or something that you have, or storytelling, because that's the most important thing. And so that is always in the back of my mind. But I can't, I say this when I talk to students, I find it very difficult to explain exactly. I think you have a gift for cutting, or you don't, maybe. And so I think what I'm fumbling through in this film, and that you're going to look at, I mean, I don't think that what I'm saying is necessarily always exactly what I was feeling at the time I was cutting, because I can't even remember. I have to say a very funny story, but you didn't have to say it. Is somebody rang from Australia like 3 a.m. once and said, got the time wrong, obviously, didn't mean to wake me up. They said, now you're awake, you might as well stay awake. And they said, could you tell me, like, this was like 15 years later, what you were thinking when you made that cut in Lawrence of Arabia, where he blows the match out and the sun comes up? I said, you think I can remember what I was thinking? It's so crazy.